You want with him?
I wasn't going to plan on it, but I didn't have it. We were having a lot of questions about genetics. Did this run in the family? Anything, was there birth injury? Any kind of infections when I was pregnant with him? And the answer is no. I had a perfectly normal pregnancy. I had a C-section birth that went perfectly fine. We actually met with a geneticist at Children's Hospital in New Orleans. He did several tests. Nothing ever came from it. No genetic, no metabolic problems, nothing. To this day, we have no idea, none. Anyway, we stayed with this doctor at Children's Hospital New Orleans for about 1.5 years. And we would have stayed with her a lot. We liked her very much. But then a newer doctor came, and, you know, Jack is considered a very complex case. So she did recommend that we go to the newer doctor at Children's Hospital New Orleans, which we're still with and we like very much. This is in 2015 that all of this happened. So about midway through 2015, we did start Jack with early steps, early intervention services through the state to help with therapies, speech, occupational, and physical therapy, because his development was so delayed. He lost everything. So the therapy was there to help him. So we started on that, and that was great. It was so nice to have a support team with him, and to make goals and to just try. And he seemed happier. The seizures were still occurring, but it wasn't like before. That was fine. Everything went fine up until February of 16. I noticed he was still having his normal seizures, but then it looked like the infantile spasms had come back. They looked odd to me, and he started screaming. He would scream out before they would happen, and they were happening in the daytime and at nighttime.
Yeah, something to hear in the middle of the night.
Yes, it was very alarming and jarring, as you might imagine. So we did contact a neurologist. They said immediately come to New Orleans. They hooked him up to an EEG. They found that the spasms were back. It wasn't necessarily considered a relapse because it was almost 1 year to the day that it was back. But nevertheless, it had to be treated aggressively. Since he had tried the steroids the previous year, they decided, okay, we need to get this taken care of. So they decided to recommend ACTH injections. So for that, he did have to stay in the hospital for 4 days because he had to get the injections. Everything had to be monitored, make sure he didn't have any adverse effects from it. And because we had to learn how to do the injections once we got home. And the injections were twice a day for a month. So we went through that. We learned how to do everything. His vitals had to be monitored every week. So we would bring him to our pediatrician's office, and they would make sure that his blood pressure wasn't too high. It caused weight gain, but not too bad. And it causes a lot of irritability. And it also lowers your immune system almost to nothing. So we were basically locked away in the house for about a month. No visitors. We really wouldn't get out anywhere, anything, while the treatment was going on. It seemed like his infantile spasms had stopped by the time we had gotten to about the last few dosages, but then it looked like they were still there. I had to bring him back to the hospital in New Orleans. They did an EEG. The infantile spasms were still there, or back, or coming back. So we had to do a second round of these injections for a month. The second round was worse for his irritability and how it made him feel. It didn't give him any adverse reactions as far as blood pressure or anything like that. But he would moan all day, all day long, just moan, not even cry. And it was just, it's the stuff that will just get to you.
Putting gray on your beard.
Yeah, and put this little streak of gray that I have as well. The only difference was this second round, we would put him in the car and we would drive around just to get out of the house. And we would put the window down next to him so when he would moan, it wouldn't be as loud, and he liked being outdoors, so that helped too. But there's only so long that you can ride around. So we just got through it. By the end of that second round of injections, they did the EEG. The spasms were gone, thankfully. They said, well, even if the spasms weren't gone, there is no third round of ACTH. They don't do a third round. But thankfully, they were gone. About a week after that, he developed a new type of seizure, a drop seizure, also known as atonic seizures, where he would just drop. Spontaneous loss of control of all muscles. So we had to put him on we had to add another medication of anti-seizure meds. But within a week, the drop seizures were gone. So that was one of the medications that we saw absolute immediate effect, which was great.
Yeah, and I mean, and going along that, bear in mind, every time we start a new medication or ACTH or whatever, your hopes start to go up. So emotionally, it's this roller coaster, man. Like you right back down. So so the whole time it's just little celebrations and then more disappointment. So.
Yeah. We started to get used to the idea of not getting our hopes up for stuff, because false hope is worse to us than bad news.
Right.
I mean, after the drop seizures ceased, he never was rid of seizures completely. Never. He made some progress. It took about a year of oral motor therapy through his speech therapist for him to be able to eat table food, because he was just still on bottles and baby food, like the very pureed baby food. But after a year, he was able to start eating table food, which was great because we could feed him, normally, and he enjoyed it very much. He very much enjoyed food, which was great. Occupational therapy didn't do a whole lot. He still is, even to this day, he can't really grip. He can't hold things in his hand. He can grip our finger, but it's not intentional. It's just kind of, he feels around sometimes. In physical therapy, he was able to get strong enough to hold his head up, to sit up for certain periods of time, to be able to roll on the floor in both directions, to get up on his elbows. So, I mean, there was some improvement. In September of 2016 is when we started seeing, we changed neurologists at Children's Hospital New Orleans, and we were with the current neurologist is from that time. And so he has been great with wanting to find out why. Why is Jack having that? Why has he had all these seizures? Why did it start? Where is it coming from? And he's done every test imaginable. We haven't found out anything, but it was so refreshing to have a doctor who was trying, who was, curious about how complex he was. And it was very important to him to try to find out and to do everything he could. By the end of 2016, we had made 23 trips to Children's Hospital New Orleans. So 2016 was something.
Yeah.
Into 2017, Jack continued having his seizures, his regular seizures. They would change every few months, the types. He was about a year. I talked about the drop seizures a little while ago. They stopped within a week of that medication in 2016. Almost a year to the day in 2017, the drop seizures came back. He actually was sitting in a high chair and his face slammed into the tray, and he had gotten a little cut and bruise on the side of his eye. But that's how spontaneous and abrupt and violent they can be, just because he had no control. So we upped his medications. They were fewer and fewer, and then just gone. But by August, September of 2017, his neurologist wanted to have a 24-hour EEG done because he suspected that Jack was kind of getting into the range of Lennox-Gastaut syndrome.